Hello, I'm Yolanda Nava, and this is Do You See What I See? We have a dynamo of a guest today. She's a self-made media mogul, entrepreneur, and producer, Nely Gala. Welcome, Nely.
Yolanda, it's so good to be here with you. We've been together many times, but not for a while. So it's great to be here with you again.
Well, I'm excited about what you're doing, and we're going to start our show with a 4-minute video that's pow pow. It tells us about Nely Gala. Go to video.
I came to this country when I was 4 years old with my family.
Nely Gala is a self-made media mogul.
I'm the kid of immigrants, and I figured my parents did not bring me all this way for me not to do something big.
She started out as the youngest guest editor of 17 magazine, which led her to reporting for network television. At 22, she became the country's youngest television station manager. Galan founded her own company, Galan Entertainment, in 1994, which helped launch over 10 television channels abroad and produced over 700 television shows in English and Spanish, including the hit reality series The SWAN for Fox Network, which was famously spoofed on Saturday Night Live. Galan became the first Latina president of a U.S. network, Telemundo. Galan has since started the Adelante movement to unite and empower Latinas economically and entrepreneurially.
Because Adelante means move it, move forward.
The media and the U.S. government took notice.
Here with us now, Emmy Award-winning producer Nely Gala.
I wanted to say, if you're not looking for Latinas in your corporation, you're missing the boat. Our goal is to train as many Latinas as we can.
We can see her excitement.
I'm excited. Adelante.
Thank you for teaching me a new word, adelante.
And now, Nely has a New York Times best-selling book and a platform called Self-Made for all women.
My charity is for women entrepreneurs.
You are so positive.
But I love your slogan. You know what her slogan is? Don't buy shoes, buy buildings.
There is no true empowerment until you are financially self-reliant. And self-made is not a grandiose feat. It's for all women. We can all do it from our house. Every company has to look at this new reality that women are the sleeping giant in America. We have incredible power, and there are more entrepreneurial opportunities for us than there are jobs. Power is not given, it's taken, and it's there for us. Think bigger. Becoming self-made is the new ticking clock for women. It's not if, but when. This has been a time of breakthroughs and crisis. And now we know more than ever that in order to become self-made, we need to be louder and braver. No one has the ability to speak up the way we have in this country. We must fight for social justice and fight for our small businesses. If we all work together, we can be abundant and change our position in this world. Because in every crisis,
That is a fabulous video.
there is a silver lining.
Preach it, preach it.
We have to stand up. This is a country built on voices, people standing up for their rights. Finding your voice for some people is a lifetime journey, and it is the greatest journey of your life. All the power is in our hands. Now, here, go. Adelante.
Well, welcome back. That's a fabulous video, Nely. And
Thank you, Yolanda. Thank you. It's been a journey, as you know, to find my voice, as for so many of us.
but you had a voice at a very young age. And let's go back in time, because when I interviewed you for It's All in the Field, you gave me two very powerful contributions, and one was about what you've learned from your mother. Let's start there, because she gave you some powerful messages, and then you were in a position where you had to challenge your parents' more cautious messaging.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, I think, listen, I think that I am everything I am because I am an immigrant, and I did have a traumatic immigration experience where my parents left a communist regime from one day to the next and lost everything and had to start all over again. And the good messages I got from my parents were about being proud to be Latina, that being Latina was the best of both worlds, that I had this beautiful heritage, and that I got to be fully American and fully Latina, and that that was a privilege and a gift that a lot of people around the world wish they could have, and that I was given that gift because of a tragedy. And then the other thing that I think both my parents taught me is, because they came here and started all over again when they were about 40 years old, they had us late in life. And, you know, to start all over again, I can't even imagine if at my age I'm starting all over again, but they never complained. They went back to work. They were both professionals and had gone to college and had to go back and work in factories. And we're just grateful to be here and to be in this country. And so that work ethic, that gratitude, that love for my country, that patriotism to the United States has really served me. What didn't serve me is that they had the fear that immigrants have to not rock the boat, to not speak up, to not feel that they deserve the best this country has to offer, and that sometimes when you love your country, you still can argue with it, you still can protest, you still can, you know, they felt that that was not okay. Because to be fair, when you come from a communist regime, if you speak up, you go to jail and you get tortured. And, you know, in many Latin American countries, Yolanda, you know that there's a term for it, and it's called desaparecidos, the disappeared. And those are people that speak against the government. And so when you come here and they had this child that was empowered and that was learning about Martin Luther King and about civil unrest and all these things and the women's movement, and I felt like I belonged to that. They kept telling me to be quiet and not speak up because they were afraid.
well, fear is false evidence appearing real, I've discovered, and I've written about that in my new book, Through the
Yes.
Dark. But this timing, because you had you challenged things at a time when you were very young.
Yes.
You were expelled from school, Catholic school, because
Yes.
you wrote an article against the nuns.
Yeah.
And your mother, of course, said, you know, you can't argue with the nuns. We have to go apologize.
That's
and you
right.
said,
And what happened to me is that, yeah, I wrote an article about why you shouldn't send your daughter to all-girl Catholic school, sent it to 17 magazine. I thought it was quite humorous, actually.
it was wonderful.
But the nuns kind of said, we don't like your kind here. I was only one of 2 Latinas in this Catholic, all-girl Catholic school. And my mom said, you have to go apologize to the nuns, and when you have to beg forgiveness. And I instead called the Board of Ed of the state of New Jersey. And by the way, that was a feat back then, because I had to go to the library, find the number. All of you young women that have Google, we didn't have Google. And an African-American man answered the phone, and he was very empowered in a way that my parents were not. And I said, can they do this to me? Isn't this a First Amendment issue? And he said, well, it's a private school. They can do whatever they want, actually. But what the power you have is that I can go set up an interview for you in the local newspaper, and you can tell your story. And when I told my story, it came out, and it was like Cuban girl gets expelled for First Amendment issue. And we got called back into the school, and all of a sudden the nuns were in a good mood. And they basically said, you are such a good student. You have such good grades. We're going to graduate you a year and a half early. And my parents didn't get it, that was their way of getting rid of me.
Yeah.
And my parents are like, this is an honor. And I go, yeah, it's a really big honor. And I was very lucky because 17 magazine. So think of it in today's speak. It's like if I was an influencer back then and I come out with something in 17 magazine, wants to be part of it. And they call me and they go, we're so proud of you that you spoke up for your rights. And we're going to give you the youngest guest editorship in the history of the magazine.
Yeah.
So they wanted to align, in today's speak, with my brand that was empowering teenagers.
Well, it was a great magazine. I remember reading it myself, years ago. I mean, it's been so long. I wasn't as feisty as you, but I did challenge too. And I think I'm a first generation as well as you are. I was born in this country. That's the only difference. And the culture was a bit different, coming from from a communist country, Cuban background, and not Mexican American, north of the border. It's interesting though what we learned from our parents, from the culture, from that just being so close to the other side, of the so-called border, and it seems like there's a time when the wisdom of our parents comes through, and for you it came through, and it opened up a life for you that took you to many, many places.
Mm-hmm.
How did that message that your mother gave you about the best of both worlds land you a job at Telemundo as the head?
Well, I think what happened is I was working actually through that 17 magazine job. I also got a job doing a TV show for teenagers that was kind of like the 60 Minutes for teenagers that PBS was doing. And from there, got me a job at CBS Network in Boston, being what they call today like a producer stringer. It's like somebody that does a lot of segments that go on the news, and then you see Diane Sawyer's face or whoever's the anchor. And I was interviewing a guy that is now like he's almost 100. I think he just turned 100. Norman Lear, who was a very big producer at the time, and I interviewed him for a special that Diane Sawyer was doing on John F. Kennedy. And after the interview, he says, "What are you? Are you Jewish? What are you?" I go, "No, I'm Cuban. I'm Latina." And he goes, "My partner and I just bought the first Spanish TV station in New York. You should come and work for us." And I was just like, really? Spanish TV station? That's like what my parents would like. And I thought it was like disgusting. Like a lot of Latinos or a lot of minorities, at first you don't like the Latino thing or the minority thing or whatever. And I said, "Sir, I'm working for CBS and I'm going to grow up to be a network correspondent." And he's like, "That sounds like a factory worker to me." He goes, you don't get it. You're working for two guys that are multimillionaire. My partner's almost a billionaire, and we're going to start a business. Don't you know you're Latina, you're bilingual, and you don't know that the Latino market's going to be a multi-billion-dollar market, and you're going to be employee one of a media company? Are you stupid? And when he put it that way to me, I was like, you know what? Like, and he goes, "Young lady, are you rich?" I go, "No, sir, I'm not." And he goes, "Well, we're rich. And if you're not even like, if you don't even know what you're doing, you're going to be very well off because you're going to be employee one." And I often think back to that moment, Yolanda, because I made the best and greatest decision of my life, leaving CBS and going to a startup, what would be in today's world, a startup. I don't know that many young people, including my son, would make that decision, because I think when you're young, your ego wants the more glamorous of the two jobs. And because I was broke, because my parents had gone through so much, because I felt that I really needed to make money and I needed to do something, I needed to be around people smarter than me, people that knew about money. I didn't choose the job. I chose the two very wealthy entrepreneurs. And I think that has served me very well. I've never chosen a job ever since. I've never chosen I choose people over jobs. Because you know the saying in Spanish, "Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres," right? Tell me who you hang out with and I'll tell you who you become. And I think that is the truest thing in the world. It isn't really about the job. It's about being around people that make you grow. And I became employee one of what is now Telemundo.
It's an amazing story, Nellie. It's one of those. No wonder you wrote a book later about the swan, because how does the ugly duckling grow into a beautiful swan?
That's
And
right.
your experience coming from a disastrous situation, coming into an entirely new country and having to face all the things that immigrants have to face in this country,
Right.
and start all over again is a very frightening place for your parents and for yourself, I'm sure.
It is. And I think what we're experiencing in today's world, we just went through a pandemic, we've had economic issues. I tell young people all the time, after the pandemic, my son said to me, "This is the worst thing." And I said, "Son, life is an obstacle course." And Yolanda, nobody knows this better than you. Life throws us good years and very bad years, beautiful, magical things that you never expected, and then horrible things that you never expected. And I think that if you don't learn to be, first of all, someone who is committed to growing all the time, and someone who is flexible to pivot and to change and to realize that what was yesterday doesn't mean it's going to be tomorrow. And I think other people around the world have this advantage over us because people in third world countries know that bad things happen to good people all the time. And they're prepared for that mentality. And I think a lot of our young people have not gone through a war, a crisis until now. And so we're very entitled, and we think somehow we deserve this wonderful life with no problems in it when the rest of the world suffers so much.
Well, I think I know in my time, and I'm ahead of you by, decade and a half or whatever, but in our time, it was you were going to meet your Prince Charming and get married and, remain married. I still have high school friends who have been married, 40 or 60 years.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't
And
imagine.
in my book, Self-Made, I said, we have to kill the notion of Prince Charming, because if, as women especially, but also men, like I think that this idea that someone is going to save you, and sometimes that someone is a mate, but it could be your boss, or it could be the company you work for, or it could be the government. When you put your happiness and your ability to succeed in the hands of another person, you stop taking responsibility, and that's when you become a victim. And so to not be a victim, I think we have to kill the notion that there's a savior that is going to help you, that you have to be your own savior.
Yeah, that is outside of yourself. I was going to say that because in terms of your trajectory, I was going to say you were obviously born under a blazing star, because you've had a very exemplary life, a very powerful life, a very empowered life, an abundant life, on many, many fronts. But yet there's stuff that one goes through, we've gone through.
And I also think, Yolanda, that in my case, I think when you listen to my video, and I get impressed with my video, I go, wow, it sounds great. But really that video refers to 2 or 3 big successes. The truth is that to have 2 or 3 big successes in your lifetime, you have to have failed many times. And I have failed horrifically in career, in my personal life, in so many ways. I don't want people to think I'm so special and I'm so great. I definitely don't give up like you don't give up. And I definitely stay the course. But I have had, back-breaking and failures. I've had dark nights of the soul. I have had many things go wrong. The truth is that my son always reminds me that this is like a sports analogy, but it's true. To be in the major leagues and go into the Hall of Fame, you basically have to hit the ball 3 out of 10 times, right? So I've hit the ball maybe 3 times where it's really like been a big hit. And the rest of the time it's been neutral or failure. But I understand that maybe my background, leaving my country and all that, maybe it was a gift because it prepared me for things going wrong. I don't assume that everything is going to go la, 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 la all the time. And I say that a lot to my son, because I think kids today with social media and all this stuff, there is a false narrative of what life is supposed to be. And they live almost wanting that narrative that is just a false persona that people put out in the world that isn't the truth. When I look at anybody, rich, poor, I've worked for 8 billionaires. They're not happy all the time. And they have, you could say they have rich people problems, but they're really bad problems too. And so I don't go around thinking that somebody has a better life than me. I know that everybody has a different cross to bear. And, you can look at someone else and go, wow, they look like they have a very charmed life, but you don't know what their life is, and you don't know what their secret is, and you don't know what their cross is.
Well, I think one of the things that, we can see in you, and I know that's been there, from the experience that we had in our interviews in the past, is that you were courageous from a very young age, and you were bold. And in talking to some of my friends, Gloria Molina, Supervisor Molina has announced, that she's in the last stage of her life, that she's had a diagnosis. And I've known Gloria since she was 20 years old. And it's, we're close friends. And we were talking about this, she says, gosh, I was so bold, and I said, yes, but we had to be bold. How could we have been pioneers in the Chicana movement and in politics and in media, and the things that we did, had we not been bold and courageous and took the step? You didn't know what was going to happen if you went to work for this company versus, an existing, major media company. And so it's the boldness. To talk about the boldness, and from what do you draw your courage?
I think it's changed over the years. I think in the beginning, when I was very young, I was at the crossroads of, again, parents who were in full fear all the time. And I was the generation after the women's movement, the generation after Martin Luther King. And I had so much hope for movements and for things. And yet I was juxtaposed with these parents that were very fearful. So I felt that I had to be the brave one for everyone. I had to hold bravery for the family because no one else had it. I think over the years, it's changed. I think over the years, I always say I'm a Libra, and Libras are very balanced, and we like justice. And so I hate injustice. And I think that over the years, it became about other people for me, that I would see injustices happen in a company, or I would see, I could tell you, as I know you can tell these stories too, of injustices that I witnessed, and then I'd have to fight for other people. And it was something that came very easily to me because I fought for my parents. And sometimes that's, as you know, Yolanda, sometimes that's not good in your personal life because you're saving other people, and sometimes you forget to save yourself, right? But I think that sort of was my North Star, is to fight injustice wherever I saw it. And, my son has said to me, Mom, I have witnessed you making a grown man cry. And I go, yeah, I'm good at that because I have a way of saying things that's almost, I don't know. I think, well, in my book, I talk a lot about taking acting lessons, which I've done. I think when I was very young, I was very I did not come out of the womb with this voice, but I was very introverted, and I am kind of introverted, but I started taking acting lessons, and I would read the part, I tell women that my favorite part to read is Olivia Pope in Scandal, because Shonda Rhimes, I don't know how many people know about her. She's a beyond introverted, very quiet writer, African-American woman writer. And she writes these women that are like chingonas, that tell men off, but do it in a very intelligent way. I never wanted to be like a scandalous person. I wanted to have a voice that would be very intelligent so that the person couldn't deny what I'm saying, right? And Yolanda, I think that I got asked by NBC to go on Celebrity Apprentice when they started the show because Donald Trump had a lot of lawsuits against him from Latinos on job sites. And they said, we need a Latina who can speak up to Donald Trump. And who knew what was going to happen to Donald Trump? But I went on the show, and Donald Trump yelled at me in the first episode, and I put him in his place in a very elegante, business-like way, but not allowing him to do that. And the only reason I knew to do that is because I had practiced so many times, both in acting class and then in real life, with other, even bigger billionaires than him, bosses. And it's funny because I'm on a board right now with a lot of billionaires. And it's so funny because I'm the most powerful voice in the room. And I think it's because I
lost your audio.
We lost my audio?
Yeah, it just went silent on my end.
Oh, can you hear me
Are we
now?
okay, Marty?
Huh.
Yeah, it just cut. It
Can
just
you hear me
cut.
now?
I hear you,
Let's
but
keep going
let's
because
keep going.
he can edit.
He
He can edit.
can patch
So
it, yeah.
I think that I've had so many billionaires as bosses and as clients that I also know that they don't respect people with no voice. So I got, in the beginning, I was afraid. Then I tried it, and then they were like, okay. And I realized that they like it. They like people that are not afraid of them. And so I had practiced so many times that by the time I got to Donald Trump, it was a walk in the park.
Well, yeah,
by the
because
way,
he's a bully and he's a coward. Ultimately, he's a
Yeah,
coward.
yeah. So I think that it is, finding your voice is something sometimes you have to practice, because not everybody comes out of the womb with a powerful voice, especially coming from the backgrounds we come from.
Right. Yeah, the boldest was something that, Gloria was a quiet, relatively quiet young woman. And then we were invited to speak at the California Commission on the Status of Women, and she spoke. And I made the joke after, for 20 years later at all our reunions, that, she started talking back at that commission meeting, and she hasn't stopped since, which is, very empowering,
Because I think once you find your voice, there's no turning back. I try to explain to women that it's like watching American Idol or The Voice, the TV show The Voice, where you hear people sing and they're imitating somebody else and they don't have a unique voice. And for a while, sometimes you have to practice in someone else's shoes, in someone else's voice. But eventually you find that hidden voice that's inside of you that always wanted to come out and that was afraid. And when you find it, there's no turning back.
It's important. And these times require that voice. So your inner strength, you've grown through taking classes. You somehow managed to find time to get a doctorate in psychology.
Yes.
You've grown your education. You've taken different
twists and turns,
self-improvements and
Yes.
self-mastery.
Yes.
So talk about the self-mastery piece of what you've done.
Well, I think for me, I always say, like, my number one value, my mantra to myself is to grow every day by any means necessary. And, I don't know if you ever met Lisa Quiroz, who was Lisa Quiroz was the Latina President of the Time Warner Foundation. Before that, she launched HBO en Español, and very successful Latina. And she said to me once, I consider it the greatest compliment of my life. She said, you're the only woman I've met past 30 that has really evolved to places that I never thought you would go. And I said, thank you, because I pride myself on that, because I think you cannot be afraid to completely blow up your life and start over. And also look at yourself very introspectively and say, has what's gotten me here still working for me? Do I have to change my game? What are my, and not be, again, it goes back to never being victimized. I was talking to a girlfriend yesterday and I said, I'm single at this age, and I've had many, as you know, many very glamorous boyfriends and husbands and all kinds of things. And I said to her, I have to look at myself very coldly, because I've also broken up with a lot of men, and maybe and I have to, I always look at what's my culpability in the story. How can I do better? How can I grow, whether it's a personal thing or a business thing? And I think for me, once I had made money, which I talk in my book about mission and money, but money sometimes has to come first, because once you have money, then you can fulfill your mission fully. And once I had made some money, My son was 8 years old and in school and was having learning issues in school. And he was like, Mom, I'm never going to go to college. You never finished college and you've done really well. And I thought to myself, I've done well, but I'm skating because only I know that I have gaps in my education. Only I know that it's not that I need to go back to school and get a degree to get another job, but I need to fill in the gaps of knowledge. And how can I model that behavior for my son when I haven't modeled it for myself? And I took a sabbatical. I went back to school. I finished college. I finished my BA. I got a master's and doctorate in clinical psychology and really focused on the psychology of money in multicultural communities, which turned me into a whole new career, a whole new point of view, a whole new legacy for me, because I realized that our community and other communities of color were financially illiterate, and that was affecting deeply our empowerment in our own communities and our ability to wealth build and leave a legacy to our children of college and of greater learning.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Your book and your organization, nonprofit organization, Adelante, provide tools. Both of those
Yes.
Projects that you did, let's call them projects, have shaped whole new ways of being for yourself and for many, many other people.
Yeah.
Because many of us don't know what to do. And so what are some of the tools, what are some of the steps, important steps that women have to think about, people have to think about?
Well, first of all, it's good for everybody to hear that when I went to school and I got my doctorate, I wrote my dissertation about this phenomenon of, illiteracy in our communities, financial illiteracy. And the dissertation became a book, and the book is called Self-Made, Becoming Empowered, Self-Reliant, and Rich in Every Way. And I think the title says it all. I wrote it for women because I felt like, women are the gateway to the family, and particularly Latina women. And I wanted those women to think differently, to have a mind shift that said, I need to have my own money. I need to be self-reliant economically. I need to teach my children about empowerment, because if I'm not empowered, they're going to marry women that aren't empowered. So it started with them. And I started doing tours around the country with the kind of women that women want to grow up to be, not just celebrities. After coming from a lifetime of making shows with celebrities, I knew that women really wanted to meet women that they could be, whether it's a lawyer, a doctor, a politician, an entrepreneur. I wanted them to see it, to be it. And then I started really giving them real tools and creating content online in English and Spanish. So the book in English is Self-Made. In Spanish, the book is called Adelante. The book also came out in Mandarin. I've traveled Asia, China twice, because women in Asia are trying to find empowerment as well. And I created an online platform called the Adelante Movement. And it's in English and Spanish. And I've done 300 hours of content with entrepreneurial women from the bottom up, all ages, all ethnicities, Spanish and English, and showing women how they could make money, how they could invest that money, and how they could have an abundant life at the end of their life, and even pass money and give back in philanthropy and give back to their kids.
Well, those are all wonderful stages, to explore and certainly to think about. I just did an interview in March for Women's History Month with Dolores Huerta, and her trajectory has been amazing. And at 93, she's still going strong. She founded, not just, she did it 20 years ago. She founded the Dolores Huerta Foundation that's doing incredible work of service to train people in social justice and activism. Constructive,
Yes.
And providing health services and other support services to people who need help. And these are important steps. I think we've been behind, I think, in the Latino community in terms of philanthropy, even though we have many self-made millionaires, and we even probably have billionaires as well. But it's important to give back. and the Adelante movement is one way that you've done that. And providing these tools for people is another way. These are very important. So I think at some point you're going to have to do a foundation too, Nelly.
I know. Well, listen, from your mouth to God's ears, I think, in the stages of life, especially when we make money early, then we have a lot of years left to give back. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think that's something that so many people in our community don't have the privilege to do, because sometimes we work hard, but we don't work smart, right? We didn't really know. Like, I remember when Jerry Parencho, one of my bosses, says to me, "Young lady, you've got to make money while you sleep." And I was like, what is he talking about? I had no idea. And I think we don't get taught as little kids that the money you make and the money you save has to be invested so that, God forbid, something happens to you, you eventually have passive income. You have money that comes in from your investments. And I don't think we just think we have to work till we drop dead.
Yeah.
And so it's all of those things. It's all of those awarenesses that I've gotten. And listen, I think I told you, Yolanda, that I have a new podcast called Money Maker, and I'm doing it in English and in Spanish. I do everything in English and Spanish.
Yes.
Because I'm so wanting to support especially all these new immigrants that have arrived, that are having so many problems in Latin America, the Venezuelans, the Peruanos, the Argentinos. And I want them to be onboarded in this country well and not have to struggle as much as we used to have to struggle before, not knowing anything. So my podcast in Spanish is called Mi Mundo Rico. And I love calling it Mi Mundo Rico because, as we know, the word rico in Spanish means abundant, but it also means delicious. Yeah. And it should be a delicious journey to learn all this.
It is a delicious journey, and that's a very exciting thing. So what are a couple of things people should think of, just for some viewers that are wanting to take the first steps? What are some of the first important steps to take in terms of financial empowerment?
Well, I think the number one thing you have to do, which I've done, and I tell everybody, I tell whether you're 12 or 70, you have to save money by any means necessary. And I'm tough because I tell you that you have to save 2 years of salary. And that means that whatever you have to cut, I say sacrifice is not suffering. You have to sacrifice for a short period of time so that you have, amassed a little bit of money, which is your security blanket, so that that money allows you to begin your journey in financial literacy, meaning you can invest that money, whether it's in real estate or whether it's in stock, which that's a whole other journey to learn stock. But if not, you can put it in T-bills. You can, that the government, treasury bills that the government right now is paying 5% on those. Anything that brings you money, that gives you income without you working. That's not your day job. It's your side hustle. And that really requires 2 years of salary, because that way, it gives you 1 year of salary for a catastrophe that happens that doesn't break you, and the second year of salary to start investing. And I think that's how I began. I started at 31. It's not like I knew this early. And I started buying real estate. And by the time I was 45, and I knew nothing, and I knew no one in real estate, but I started going to open houses. I started meeting brokers. I started meeting mortgage. By the time I was 45, I had 19 buildings and could live as a landlord without making one TV show or doing anything else. So it's possible to do it. If I knew nothing, I'm not a real estate agent, I knew nothing. Now, I went that way. In today's world, there are other ways to invest. I'm probably going to stop investing in real estate at this point and invest in other things like the U.S. government. I'm going to invest in treasury bills and in product that comes from the U.S. government, because I'm in a phase of my life of a lot of security, because I just want to have wealth at the end of my life. So I'm not doing big risks. Whereas when I was younger, you do bigger risks, because over a 20 or 30 year period, that's when you make most of your money in risk.
Well, risk is an important part of life, and certainly we have to take risks, otherwise we don't get anywhere. And you had a life filled of risk and adventure. I think adventure is very important too, because we learn a lot about it.
Yes.
I recently was, last Saturday, as a matter of fact, I attended the Las Comadres Worldwide Comadrazo as a finalist for the Nora Award. And I really enjoyed the workshops that they had, the breakout sessions that they had. And I was amazed because there are all these women who are entrepreneurs, Latina entrepreneurs, and they're involved in so many different fields. It's very exciting to see that and to, to listen to their excitement and, their openness and willingness to learn. It was a very exciting experience because I'm not in the business, into entrepreneurial sector. I'm a social worker at heart, really, a writer and a journalist. But the empowerment that's going on among Latino women is very important, and the level of economic growth. What is it? We have 1.5 billion Latina entrepreneurs. We're among the fastest growing group of female entrepreneurs in this country, and yet this isn't reported in the news. Our market, our Hispanic market in the United States, is $2.7 trillion. Soon to surpass the economy of France. So we're still a well-kept secret, but amongst ourselves, we can see role models and people like yourself who are stepping forward and giving back and providing tools and inspiration for the younger generations.
I think we come from such a background of humility, and that it isn't cool to sell yourself. And we got to get over that, because we're in a country that if you don't toot your own horn, and if we don't toot each other's horn, I think we see a lot of other communities that figured this out, like African Americans, like the Jewish community, that if you don't speak up and if you don't know who your leaders are and who your heroes are, and if we don't promote each other, we're not going to get there. And we do have this huge economy. We have huge numbers, and yet we don't have the power for the numbers of people that we have. And that we are the #1 emerging market. We are the #1 shoppers in America. We are the ones that are, that are building all these companies, and yet we don't promote each other or ourselves. We gotta look at that.
Well, we also need help from the major media, because it's still a black-white conversation. The brown gets thrown in there, but it's not significant enough. And there must be a broader conversation that includes us and what we're doing and the contributions that we made. Like, people don't know that General Santana of Mexico attacked the Alamo because he wanted to prevent Texas from becoming a slave state, and that's a contribution. And we're not told that. We're told a completely different narrative. And the same thing in California. It was the early Mexican Californios in Alta California that prevented California from becoming a slave state. So why isn't this taught in school? That's one of the reasons.
By the way, Yolanda, I say that all the time. I go, the biggest problem, and I say this to African Americans who often say to me, Nely, I don't get it. Why don't you guys speak up more? And I go, you don't understand, because our history is not taught in your school. Right. It's just not. So you don't understand that we're so wise, and you could learn so much from our history, because we already know what works and what doesn't work in other countries. And yet our story is not taught. So you just take us at face value, but you don't really know us.
Yeah, it's very important. I think that would be a good project for us, Nely.
I know, you're right, Yolanda. Ooh, as we're saying it, you're right.
That's a project.
It is
That's
very
a project
important.
because it is, we need, in California, it's already a measure that's been signed into law by, it was Jose Medina, a former assembly member who got the bill passed, and the governor Newsom has signed it. It goes into effect the fall of 2024. And we will then have to take ethnic studies in order to graduate from high school, which is good because then everybody learns these different cultures and histories. And it's going to take a lot of work to help build those educational platforms. That's why I'm so excited about this call from Boston, from the book publisher. And so I'm really looking at that because that's the next step for us. We've got to get our stories told. We have to have people understand who we are instead of the negative stereotyping. We've seen so much forward movement, on Yolanda and many things, Comadrazo, all of these different groups of very self-empowered women who are working hard and making a tremendous difference. We have the first college president that's a Latina. I mean, there are all these people, that are out there, but they're not in the schools where they're role models for our population, certainly in certain states, Florida, California, Texas, and others, where you have a majority Latino population.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I think that, look, everything what I've learned, Yolanda, and it's very painful because I think we all think in our lifetime we're going to make some, some incredible change in the world. I realize also that we are really all in a relay race, and it's very important that we do as much as we can. And then we have to pass the baton to someone else, and they have to take it to the next place. And I think we, especially those of us that have activism in us, we have to pass a very big baton because we're behind. And I think we have to really encourage this next generation to like speed it up.
Well, they have to jump in like we jumped in. Like Gloria said, I was so bold. I said, well, we had to be bold and courageous. And that's what it takes. It takes knowing that it's one step at a time. It's taking strategic action. It's not a matter of going out screaming and yelling and protesting. It's a matter of having strategic projects and legislation and strategies that need to be employed. They did it in Texas. We've done it in California. We've done it elsewhere. And it has been done. It'll continue to be done, but it has, like you say, the younger generation has to take on.
That's why we have to go adelante. I could talk to you for hours and hours, but I know that we only have so much time. So I want to leave you with that thought that I do think the word adelante is very apropos. For those of you that don't speak Spanish, they're watching, it's like, you could say adelante. It's how you say it. Adelante, like move your butt.
Yeah.
I think we're at a place where we need to make a quantum leap. And I think maybe with this whole AI thing, which is very controversial, but I do think that information is going to move now even faster. And maybe finally our stories will get told.
They are being told, they will be told, and I'm going to keep writing them because I love to write. That's my favorite thing to do. And I thank you so much, Nely, for sharing your story and for doing your books and for doing your Adelante project. And let's think about some other things that can be done ongoing. I'm so grateful for you being here today and for your work and contribution over the decades. And I thank you so much.
And Yolanda, thank you, because you are so inspirational. You have like taken every obstacle and just said, bye-bye obstacle. And I am just so honored to be with you and so inspired by you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Nely. And to our audience, be sure to tune in next month in June. Our guest is going to be the acclaimed poet and author, Gary Soto. Look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for joining us. I'm Yolanda Nava for Do You See What I See?